Hey everyone, I've had a number of requests lately for people wanting to find out how they can get into playing over changes or playing over jazz chords or getting out of the blues box. So I just thought I would talk a little bit about that, focusing on dominant seventh chords, which I think probably are the most important chord if you're in a blues country context or even jazz to get familiar with. Now on the guitar we know that we have 5 positions, so anything that I talk about here, then you would want to put in all of those 5 positions to open up the entire fretboard. We just look at A7. We're just going to take good old standard A7, what's called the E position. For those that are familiar with the cage system, this comes out of your E shape here that's moved up there. The thing that I would suggest doing initially, before you worry about scales, a lot of bebop playing, it's not modal, it's quite diatonic with a lot of chromatic influence in there. So I would suggest getting really familiar with the notes of the arpeggio, the 1, the 3, the 5, and the flat 7. So in the key of A, that's going to be 1 is A, C sharp is 3, E is 5, and then a G is going to be flat 7. So you get this. So they're just the notes of the chord. So you don't really have to break your position. You want to get familiar with where they are and how they sound. So knowing that that's a flat 7, that's a third, you get the tritone. That's the defining characteristic of a dominant 7th chord. So you get that beautiful resolution to a 1 chord. So what I would suggest doing is putting on, say, a backing track. And you want to get used to harmonic rhythm, particularly if you're playing in a jazz context. Harmonic rhythm is perhaps the most important thing. And that is the placement of strong notes on strong beats. You could be theoretically in time, in pure rhythm, but if you place a wrong note on a wrong beat, it will sound like you're out of time. So it's a bit of a strange concept to get used to, but if your lines sound a bit weird, chances are it's not so much the notes, it'll be the placement of the notes. So if you put on just a backing track, it could be iReal Pro, it could be a YouTube backing track. Something that swung would be ideal. So if you had, imagine like this, and just playing notes in the arpeggio. It doesn't have to be straight up and down. Try and get a bit creative, but just try and find those notes. So you get like, so I was adding a couple of grace notes into things like that. Once you get familiar with that, then they're the sort of safe zones that you can come back to. They're what's known as your chord tones. They are the fundamental notes of the chord. Then you can start looking at color notes, embellishments. So find where the 9th is. The 9th is the 2nd degree. It's a great note in jazz. That's going to be a B in this context here. So you've got a B there, you've got a B there, you've got a B here. The 13th of the 6th is also really hip. That's an F sharp. And you've got your blues note. I don't use that too much. It sort of sounds too much like an actual blues lick. It should be reserved for only special purposes. But if you add those other notes in there, then all of a sudden you're going to start to get a slightly more sophisticated sound in your line. If I do that same thing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sounds jazz, like jazz right there. What you can then do is add chromatic notes between the chord tones and the embellishment. So when you're on, say, the 13th, the F sharp, it sounds really hip if you go chromatically down. It sounds great if you do that from the 9th to the 20th, from the 3rd to the 9th, from the 5th to the 4th, and then encircle the 3rd, like that. So if we do that same thing now, we get sounding even more like bebop. It's still not that interesting because we're not doing much with the rhythm and we're not doing anything with lines that you can take from the 5 chord. But I would start by doing that and then do it in all different positions. So then you have your G position. We're still in the key of A, but doing it here. Doing it up here with your D position. Then your C. Then your A position. Back to your G. Then once you can do that, then you can mix up the rhythm a little bit, and you'll find that sometimes you'll fall off in terms of being in time and being out of time. But this is how it starts. This is how I did it. I just sort of worked out a couple of licks that I liked by horn players and guitar players, and then found where they were on the fretboard and sort of pieced it together. And you want to use your ear. Like, singing is a really important thing, because obviously your fingers don't have any minds of themselves. They're not just instantly going to play strong notes or strong melodies. They're going to go for notes that you can visually see fit in the scale, which are probably going to be the really obvious choices. So singing what you play is really good. Jamming with people is really fantastic. It's better than playing with a backing track, but obviously you can't always do that. So I'll do another installment on this kind of stuff, but hopefully this gives you an idea of how you can start to approach it. And this is what you can do with all chord types. Doesn't matter if it's a major chord, minor chord, or a dominant seventh chord. Remember, there are only 3 types of chords. There's major chords, minor chords, and dominant seventh chords. Everything is just a version of that. Any kind of altered chord is a dominant chord. Any kind of diminished chord is a dominant chord. Any kind of augmented chord is a form of a dominant chord. And any kind of minor 11, minor 9, they're all minor chords. Same goes for the major chord. So I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, leave a comment and I'll get to it. Take it easy.